Hey Ashley,
Hey, Casey.
this is Nostalgic Nightcaps, and this episode today is our monthly Retro Reads a Book Club. Can you tell the listener what all of that means?
Yes. So, our new podcast, Nostalgic Nightcaps, is where we talk about the sometimes books, but also movies and TV shows and music and just pop culture in general that we loved growing up. And each week we will be pairing an on-theme cocktail or beverage of some kind. For the last week of each month, we are doing the Retro Reads Book Club, where we talk about a book that was important in one of our childhoods, or both. Usually not
Yeah,
both.
you sounded so pleasant when you said that. You're like,
Yeah.
but I don't know how to read actually.
Yes. I've never read a book in my life.
This week's book club is about the best Christmas pageant ever by Barbara Robinson, published in 1972. It's an
It's an
oldie
oldie.
but goodie.
That was weird. We didn't plan that.
Can I tell you a little bit about this book?
Yeah, of course.
So there's this trashy family called the Herdsmans.
Yes.
Herdmans? Oh my gosh, is it
Herdman.
Herdmans? The Herdmans. It's a really hard one for me to say for some reason. They're called the Herdmans. There's like six of them. They're just running wild. They're awful, whatever. They torture all these kids at school. The one
Yes.
place they don't torture the children is at church on Sundays.
Hmm.
But then they end up at church one Sunday because someone says that there's food there. These poor kids just do not get fed,
Oh
apparently.
no.
And they take an interest in the annual Christmas pageant, which our narrator, her mother, ends up having to put on because the original woman broke her leg.
Taking the stage directions a little too literally there, lady.
And they all end up getting the lead parts, and it's chaos and it's wonderful. And yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And what are we drinking while we're reading this book? Talking about this book.
So I do have, I'm sorry, another hot chocolate cocktail.
You can never have too many.
You can double up on ingredients this way. Anyways, this is called the Wild Child Hot Chocolate Cocktail.
Yes.
So it has 6 ounces of hot chocolate, 1.5 ounce peppermint schnapps, one
Oh,
ounce of chocolate liqueur, which I did dark chocolate, just to
okay.
mix it up a little, topped with whipped cream, garnished with a candy cane. And you can also put it over ice, which I did because I, as we discussed on last week's episode, much prefer an iced beverage.
Absolutely.
And it's delicious on ice, by the way. It is so good.
That sounds good. I like that we both did not use regular chocolate liqueur. You went dark and I went white.
We're wild.
We're different.
And obviously, it's named after the wild children of the Herdmans.
Yes. And they are wild.
Ashley,
Yes.
I want to start off this book club by discussing our histories, if we have them, with this book. What we know of it, what we've seen. I know that there's like a lot of adaptions, there's a couple sequels. What are you coming into this book club knowing?
So I came into this book club, I mean, before I knew absolutely nothing. I had never heard of this book or
What?
any of the variations
Are
ever
you kidding
in
me?
my life. Nope. Not kidding.
I'm honestly shocked by this news.
I like how it's like the crossed out worst to
Mhm.
best. Whatever. Best
Yes.
worst Christmas pageant.
It's very cute stylizing.
Yeah. And there is a new Judy Greer movie, which I need to watch and see how they change things, because I'm sure they changed things. I would hope that
A
they've
few
changed
things,
some
yeah.
things.
Yes, absolutely. I do want to watch the adaptation. Just want to put
Yes.
that in there right real quick. But I am upset that this came out this year because this book was impossible to get from the library.
Uh,
All of the old copies with the old covers that I knew as a child were so expensive or sold out. So I ended up having to buy the movie tie-in cover, which it was
yeah.
$5 at Target.
Oh, they got it at Target?
Yes. And
Nice.
I'm not sure when this comes out if this will still be the case, but it is on sale on Amazon right now. It's
Hmm.
$1.99 on Kindle and like
Yeah.
$5 on paperback. So very cool.
Yeah, I got it on Kindle.
That being said, I have a long and storied history with
Yeah.
this book.
What is it?
This is one of my favorite books ever.
Yeah.
And immediately, as I got to that first passage in the book, chapter one, I could have recited that by heart. I used to read
Aw.
this book at least every year, usually multiple times a year, not just at Christmas.
Yeah.
It's just such a good book for me, and it still remains that way because the storytelling is so perfect. It's
Hmm.
so funny. It's just incredible
Yeah. Like the voice is so good and so kid.
and exciting. It's you can grasp so much about these characters, and that's why I always loved about them because the Herdmans, as the all the characters in the book talk about, they're terrified but so fascinated by these children, and so am I.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because I love a bad gal, especially. Imogene is my girl. I love Imogene. And yeah, so this is definitely one of my favorites. And I actually did buy a copy of the book too because I was going to bring it when this episode comes out. I'll be in Mexico with my family celebrating Christmas, and I want to read this with my niece and nephew so they
Aw,
can get that experience as well.
cute.
Because it's just one of those books that really got me as a kid. Not because I necessarily related to it, but it just like sucked
Mhm.
me in and let me live inside of the pages. And it's really clever as well.
It is. It really is. And have you read the other ones too?
I have read the best school year ever, but I did not read that
At
one as
the
much.
Halloween.
I no, because that one's actually a newer one.
Oh, is it?
That was published after the time when I was a child. I think in like the 2010s or something. It
Really?
was a lot later. I don't
Interesting.
really have a lot of memory of the school year one. I didn't I probably liked it, but it just like didn't stick with me as much as this book did.
Yeah. Was that one like right after this?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I think that the reasons why it stuck with me are kind of the things that I noticed now, but I don't think I could have put into words then why I enjoyed this book so much as a child and what like I got from it.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Shall we move into the discussion portion of the evening?
Yeah. Let's.
Okay, can we talk about the characters? About
Yeah.
about these herdmans. Do you have their names handy?
They were just so all around awful, you could hardly believe they were real. Ralph, Imogene, Leroy, Claude, Ollie, and Gladys. Six skinny, stringy-haired kids, all alike except for being different sizes and having different black and blue places where they had clonked each other. Love that.
Yeah, these wild kids just live in a apartment over a garage.
Mm-hmm. Seems that way.
Their father is left, and which to everyone says, who could blame him? And I am like, I can.
Yeah, that was their treatment of these kids is not great.
No, but I think that that just all really goes into what makes this book so good and how it all comes together at the end.
Yeah. Hmm.
Who who was your favorite character?
I mean, I think I would have to go with Imogene too. I
Right?
mean, she's the star of the show.
She is.
She's the wild child.
She's so
The
wild.
wildest of the childs.
And there's just something I really like about her. She is really terrible. She also just smokes cigars.
Hmm. Which is very odd for a how old is she? Like 7, 8?
I don't know. That's not just odd. That's just, oh my God, that kid, that poor kid's little
Yeah.
lungs for developing lungs. She's really
Hmm.
nasty and she does do a lot of things that I do not like blackmailing fat kids.
Yeah. Not great.
However, there's something about her that's just really funny and fun to follow along with, like how interested she is in the pageant and the stories that
Yeah.
these kids have never heard the the story of Jesus.
Right.
which is really funny. And she's enamored with it all. And she just like wants to know more for the first time in her life.
Yeah, she normally doesn't care.
No,
Piqued her interest.
right? And I also do want to say that one of the bad things she does to one of the kids that she picks on a lot, she picks on all of the kids.
Hmm.
She picks on them if they're too pretty or they're ugly or they're, like there's always something that she can like zone in on and be like, I'm gonna pick at that. And there's something really fascinating about that. It's horrible, but I find that really, I don't know, like a fun character trait, kind
Hmm.
of.
And I do like too that the narrator is like, it was easy for me to escape because I'm just a medium child with nothing interesting about me.
Not even a name.
Just a regular kid. Yep.
But there is this part that she talks about. She likes to blackmail kids for their belongings. And one of them is the charm bracelet, the charms in the charm bracelet that this little rich girl has, and she talks about them all the
Hmm.
time. And oh my gosh, as I was reading this and I read about the charms that like actually moved and did things, like the piano keys, you could press them and the drawers came out. I immediately remember that that's such like a key moment in my head about this. Like
Yeah.
it has these little details that really stick out to me for absolutely no reason.
Hmm. And those were real. That was like a big thing.
Oh, really?
Charms like that. Yeah.
Rich kid shit?
Rich kid shit. Yeah. They were 6.95 before tax
In
in
1972?
1972
How much is
for each
that?
charm. That's a lot.
Oh my
I don't
gosh.
know. I should have looked it up.
This little rich girl talks about the charms at length. And everyone's like, oh, that's
Yeah.
cool. But then they get really tired of it. And after Imogen stole them, they were like, we were all kind of happy about that. And
Yeah.
she and the other kids are kind of like is it the id or the ego? Like what other people want to do, but they know that they
But
shouldn't
they,
because of the rules of
yeah.
society. That's what these kids all do. They're like, someone is making me unhappy, and I'm going to stop that.
Yeah. I'm gonna do something about it. And like when they burnt down the shed too, everyone was like, it was a really crappy shed. It really should have been destroyed a long time ago. We were all happy about it.
But, but the narrator says, if they had known that the shed needed to come down, they would never have done it.
Nope. Nope. Can't do good on purpose.
When the narrator is talking about all these bad things that the kids have done, there's this scene that happens during a show and tell with I think it's Claude.
Think it is clock.
He brings the really mean angry cat in to school
Mhm.
and the teacher puts her coat, yells for the kids to go in the hallway, puts her coat over her head and starts like swatting around the room. She
Yeah.
can't see anything with a broom. And she's like yelling for Claude to like come and get his damn cat. And then when
Yeah.
it's all over, she goes on the hall and he's just standing there. And she's like, why didn't you come get your cat? And he said, you told me to come out in the hallway. Like he always did what the teacher told him to do.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
I just love that. It was the narration was extremely clever.
Yes.
Things like that. Just like observations about these kids and their behavior.
Yeah, and them as a family, it is really sad. It is really sad. This book is very light and funny, but oh, these poor children have been failed by everyone.
Every single person they've come across.
And it's just so interesting because when it really gets down to it, like I said, they take such an interest in the Christmas pageant and
Hmm.
they are like listening to the story. They have all these questions. They're so curious. They do further research. And it's kind of like, okay, well, if everyone took the time, teachers do not take their time with these kids. They pass them along to
No.
the next grade. Very much a,
Hmm.
like no child left behind, which, it's just it is pushing kids forward that don't actually know how to
Right. I really do need more help,
Yeah,
more attention.
but they just don't want to deal with these kids, which, like, yeah, they're
Mhm.
awful. But the reason
Yeah.
they remain awful is because no adults care about them at all. They only care
No.
about each other, and they show their care for each other by like beating the shit out of each other.
Yep. It is really sad.
They talk about things so normally, like how they had to like put Claude had to sleep in a drawer.
Right. I I think it was maybe Gladys,
Gladys did.
one of them. But yeah, they're just like they had to take care of each other because nobody was taking care of them. And they talk about how, well, obviously their dad left when they were all really young. They're still really young. But the mom is working double shifts at the shoe factory. And when she was offered some help so that she wouldn't have to work double shifts, she's like, no, I want to keep working double shifts. I don't want to take care of these kids.
Yeah, it was
Ah,
awful.
poor
I
kids.
do like that the narrator's mother, who gets put into this position where she not only has to take on the Christmas pageant, which, by the way, nobody in this town likes to go to. It's always the same thing over and over, the same kids that play the
Mhm.
same characters. It's boring, nothing new
Yeah.
ever happens. She's put into this position where she has to run this pageant, and then she has the Herdmans are the only kids who volunteer because they threaten all the other kids to not volunteer
Hmm.
for parts, which means that like Imogene is going to be Mary.
They really emphasize they need someone that really embodies the way that Mary was, very gentle and kind and giving.
But it is very funny because Alice, the narrator's best friend, is always Mary, and she's a little bitch, to
Yeah,
put
pretty
politely.
much.
She's really mean. She's like, "You do so well in the choir," to her best friend. You should
I
get
really
in the
hope you
choir.
get in the choir again.
Oh, we all knew a little girl like that. And oh,
Definitely.
But the mom does kind of take the time to like teach these kids and indulge these children in learning about this thing that all of the other kids are so flabbergasted that the Herdmans don't know about the
Yeah,
story of the first Christmas at all.
right. Who was it that was saying like, well, of course they don't. Like who would have taught them?
Hmm.
I can't remember which kid it was, but just to recognize that and not judge them for it was kind of nice.
I know, it's like as these kids are participating in this community, the community is starting to accept them more because they are, like finding a place within it.
Hmm.
What I think is most interesting, let's discuss the obvious, like the Christmas aspect of this.
Yeah.
Because we did talk about in our our playlist episode, Christmas playlist, how Christmas isn't really religious, it's more secular. It's more of like
Hmm.
a broader holiday now.
Yeah.
And in this book, obviously, this is through a church. This is the story of Joseph and Mary and Jesus, but it also doesn't feel religious in a way because of the way that the Herdmans understand this story.
And I think it is very interesting to show. I don't know. I bet this is not what they were going for, really. But I think it's very interesting to show that to someone who has never heard this story, that it's like extremely unrealistic. Like this, things like this could never happen, you know? But it's like if you're taught this from the time you're born, then of course you're gonna, believe it and go along with
But that is
it.
interesting because of the way that the children change things up in the play, where they
Yeah.
deliver a ham instead of the frankincense, and Imogene burps the baby, and there's all these little things, and it turns out to actually be the best Christmas pageant ever because
Yeah.
of the way that these kids like change things up and show how this story isn't doesn't have to be a strictly we should be studying this because it's what we're told to study. We should be studying this because it is something that our religion tells us is important, but instead they see it in this more like human side of the story where they're
Hmm.
like, wow, these people treated these other people really terribly.
Yeah.
And they really took the story to heart in a way that wasn't about God, but about the way that people should treat each other, which is
Hmm.
what
About
religion
like
should be about.
community.
Yeah, exactly. And it ends up being such a fascinating look at what these other children that people ignore a lot of the time, what they can actually bring in perspective to the community.
Hmm. Just a different view.
Yeah, like people should act in service of others rather than because of what they're told to act like.
Yeah, like there's actually a reason for it.
One thing that this book really, I think that I couldn't have necessarily touched upon as a child, but now I see is it taught me a lot about empathy
Yeah.
and about how when the Herdmans are participating in this pageant, they are seeing this story through the lens of their own lives and what they've experienced rather than what they're just told to experience the story as. And because of
Yeah.
that, everybody else in this community starts to like sees this different version of
Right.
what the story and how the Herdmans can be.
Like people start to understand them more because of what they've brought to it.
This is a very short book that moves
Yeah.
so fast, but I found so much depth in these little moments where I especially because of how much the characters change within the story, but like don't they're not automatically these good Christian children afterwards.
Yeah. I like that too because it is like that's not how it would be. They wouldn't go to this and be involved in one church play and then just completely be different people.
Do you have any like favorite quotes that really stuck out to you?
Let me see. This one. If Imogene didn't know a secret about a person, she would make one up. She would catch you in the girls' room or out in the hall and whisper, I know what you did. And then you'd go crazy trying to figure out what it was you did that Imogene knew about. It's so like, it's so manipulative.
She's
Like,
so smart.
yes. Yeah, because then they just believe it. And they're like, oh my
Exactly.
God, people are gonna find out about me. But it's like, about what? I don't know.
And you know what that really goes to show? Because everybody has these secrets in this town.
Mhm.
But if you try to do the same thing to the Herdmans, they don't care. All of their business is
No.
out there for everyone else to see and judge at all times. So what
Mhm.
can you do to them? There's no shame there.
Right. Just kind of refreshing in a way.
That's why no one has any power over them.
Right. They don't care at all. They don't
No,
care what anyone says or does.
exactly. Here's a quote. As the Herdmans are joining or coming to church and finding out about the Christmas pageant.
Yeah.
What's the play about? Imogene asked. It's about Jesus, I said. Everything here is, she muttered.
Yeah. I love that.
There were so many parts where I was laughing out loud.
Yeah, just the voice of it is extremely good. It's extremely like it just brings you in to the story. I wish I would have highlighted more because there were so many.
It's very clever.
It is.
Oh, and this kind of goes to like how the kids kind of are truth tellers, the Herdmans, where they
Yeah.
even when they lie, but because of what you said where Imogene like makes things up but knows that you have something to hide. But they just
Yep.
kind of say what they want to say and they're not ashamed to
Hmm.
say it. And I think that that came out in this scene. They're practicing for the pageant and I think that it's the mom. It's our narrator's mom that says Joseph and Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child. Pregnant, yelled Ralph Herdman. I don't think it's very nice to say Mary was pregnant, Alice whispered to me. But she was, I pointed out.
Yeah. Tell it how it is.
And Alice is like, she's like, I'm not allowed to talk about people being pregnant. It's like, what?
I know. And then they go on that Alice, the mom, doesn't even like talking about like birds laying eggs or like any sort of anything to do with sex.
It's so funny because it the story shows how awful other people can be, but it's just so you can hide it so much more cleverly, like because of what society dictates is bad and how you should act, where the Herdmans are
Mhm.
awful, obviously, but
Yeah.
they are open and honest, which is something
Yeah.
that like a lot of these other
The
people are
rest are
not.
not.
Yeah.
This is one part too. Mrs. Armstrong was the one who usually runs the play, and she's trying to still run things, even though our narrator's mom is now in charge. So she says, "Let me tell you what to do." Mother sighed and turned off the heat under the pork chops. "All right, Helen." Mrs. Armstrong called Mother at least every other day, and she always called at supper time. "Don't let me interrupt your supper," she always said, and then went right ahead and did it anyway. It's so funny because like all the other people are also awful, but they're just like pretending that they're not.
Yeah.
They aren't being like the Herdmans.
And I think that and that's why the Herdmans are able to see the story of I was gonna say the night that Jesus was born, Christmas. I don't know. That's why I feel like they're able to see it in such a different way than all these people.
Yeah. And they don't see like the real lesson behind the story, I guess.
I mean, because how many of those people? So Imogene ends up crying during this pageant. Like there's this gr
Yeah.
beautiful moment where our narrator from the choir like looks over and she's just like amazed because she's just moved at what's happening, how she's experiencing the story, how she's experiencing
Mhm.
the play that they're putting on, like her being in this part. And how many of these other people have cried over this? I doubt not one of them have.
No, they're just kind of going through the motions, just doing it the way it's always been done.
Yes, exactly. And that's why this pageant was the best one ever. Name of the
Yeah.
book.
Name drop.
Where does this story fit in with all the other Christmas pop culture of our youth? How do you think it compares to all the other kinds of things that are put on us as children to learn about through Christmas movies and TV shows and all of that stuff?
I think that it is very different from most other things that you see. And I think that it's interesting too that it goes about it in such like a roundabout way, but you do actually learn a lot about that story. Like just the story of Jesus's birth, whatever. And it's in a way that makes it more interesting, I feel like.
Hmm.
Like you actually do think about it more and like, because these kids are learning about it for the first time, you are learning about it in a different way. And I don't think that other stories really show that, even if it is supposed to be like the same story.
That's a really good point, and I think that the book makes this point too, because even the narrator's mother talks about how she's like, I didn't ever think about this story like that. I've never asked that
Mhm.
question. And they,
Right.
all these kids who we are supposed to believe are not smart and don't know anything and don't know better, I guess,
Yeah.
they ask these questions that are so out of left field and they're so curious about it.
Hmm.
Whereas Christmas has become so mundane, the Christmas story has become mundane. It's a thing we do every single year, yet I never think about it.
Right.
Well, I'm not religious, so I definitely don't think about it, but I just,
Yeah.
even when I was going to church as a child, I was one of those
Hmm.
kids in the choir, like, I don't care about this.
Yeah. Okay, this again. Whatever.
Because that's how every single other person treats it.
Yeah, because why wouldn't they? Just they've been taught it forever.
And I do think that that's the reason why this book sticks out to me because I feel like in the way that the Herdmans question things, that
Hmm.
was so different than a lot of books that I read where it was just like the status quo. Like it just
Yeah.
everyone went with the flow. These were stories that we were just supposed to know. And we don't know why we're
Hmm.
supposed to know them really. We're just told we need to know them. And this is such a different book. and it in that it like doesn't talk down to its young reader, and that's something that I talked about like a lot on our other podcast about how
Mhm.
that those were the books that definitely connected with me as a child because a lot when you're a kid, you're always being talked down to.
Oh yeah.
You're always being treated like you're stupid or lesser than when you
Hmm.
have good questions sometimes.
Right. Yeah. And the if you weren't just like silenced, other people could learn from you.
Yes, that is such a good point about the Herdmans because people don't listen to them.
No.
It's kind of this like cycle where they
Hmm.
do like they're bad and then people don't listen to them because they're bad, but then they do things to get the attention that they clearly crave. So, like
Yeah.
they crave so much love and affection from other people, but they don't know how to express that because nobody has taught them
Yeah.
how to be loved and to be listened to. It's it's
Right.
really devastating, actually.
It really is. It's really sad. These poor kids.
I know. I was like really hoping that maybe they'll grow up to figure things out. At least Imogene, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe she will.
She's at least got the curiosity, the spirit.
She's smart.
Yeah, definitely. And we don't get as much from the other ones. Maybe they're the same way. She says something about they're just like every other large family where the older kids teach
Mhm.
the younger kids everything they know, and they're like, it makes sense because Gladys, the youngest one, is the meanest of them all.
Yeah. Yeah, and Imogene is the second oldest, so
Yeah,
oh, that's
she
funny.
started it all.
And you can really see that they teach each other and they look out for each other even in their meanness.
Yeah, they have to.
How do you think that this story fits in with everything else we've talked about this month? It has to do with Christmas.
And it's very, very unique. Nothing else we talked about had anything religious except for that we were saying that
Merry Christmas, happy
Merry Christmas,
holidays.
Happy Holidays did not need to be as religious as it was,
Yeah, come on, NSYNC.
even though it's hardly at all.
That felt more religious than this, honestly.
Right?
Which is weird
Yeah.
considering this is set at a church about the birth of Jesus of the Christianity lore.
Yes. True. It, it's fun because it is kids. Everything else was more like teen focused
Mhm.
or adults. This is like little kids, which always brings a different perspective, I think.
It is fun to hop into a book like this where you put yourself into the like literal point of view of a child,
Yeah.
but you like still learn so much from it because it like I said, it doesn't talk down and it's a good story, so it's easy to be in like be fully into the book.
Yeah.
And I think that that makes it so much easier to connect with being a child of that age and looking at the world as these kids do and
Hmm.
making the stupid decisions that they make or like questioning things as well because the narrator doesn't really talk about herself a lot, but you can
Hmm.
tell by the end of this book that she is thinking about things a lot differently than she because of the Herdmans.
They made everyone question everything.
Isn't that fun?
It is. I did enjoy this. There were definitely some things. Like it's very product of 1972 for
Yeah.
sure.
It is. Those parts were so like I really had to push the I was like "Ugh, ugh," you know.
Yep.
But
Like
I do
just
think
ignore that.
as a whole the book did feel fresh and new and
Yeah.
when I was reading it as a kid, I honestly didn't know that this had come out 20 years before I was born.
Yeah, because most of the story does seem just modern and new.
But I think that that's what's going to bring me to my last discussion question. How does your past self connect with this? And like what do you think in your present day if you've learned anything new from it?
I don't know. I feel like I I'm a herdman myself. Not in the way that I'm like a terrible person, but just I do like just question everything all the time. And I have to like know the reasons behind things, or I can't. But I think that's the ADHD thing.
Yeah.
Just have to know like why I'm doing something, or else it doesn't make sense. Like, and I feel like it comes across sometimes as like argumentative or like criticizing. It's because it's like, why are you doing it like this? But it's like because I really actually want to understand, you know? Not why are you doing like this? That's really stupid, that kind of thing. So I feel like my past self and my present self relates in that way.
That is, you bring up a good point because I feel like I've said a lot, but it really does touch on that like empathy and seeing things from a different perspective. And when you
Hmm.
were a kid, you came off as argumentative and still, and still, because you your brain works in a different way and people are interpret
Hmm.
you a certain way. And I think that that's definitely what is always happening to these kids. And because of that, they do react in a negative way.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, because they haven't had any sort of guidance or care taken for them. Yikes.
Definitely, obviously, as a child, I connected with this book so much because I read
Yeah.
it every day of my life. And I think it's a lot of that questioning or like s someone coming and telling you that things can be different. You can think of things
Hmm.
differently, and I feel like that was definitely the kind of media that I latched onto so much as a child, like these episodes of, cartoons or these books where it was like, hey, you don't have to go with the flow. You can be different.
Yeah.
It's not fair that people treat you worse because sometimes you do things differently or you think differently.
Hmm.
And I think as a kid, as a teenager, as a 30 something year old, I do still have those moments where I'm like, nobody understands me.
Yeah.
And I think that media like this, books like this especially, just like help me feel a little more seen.
Hmm. And sometimes that is all it takes is like someone who seems to, I mean, a book or whatever, something that is just like put out there to make you see like, oh, I can do things differently. Because
Yes.
maybe you want to, but you haven't seen anyone do it, and you don't know how or whatever.
That
You're
is
just
why
showing these different things.
representation matters.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to do things the way that white men have done them for hundreds of years.
And don't. And don't
Please
do
don't.
it. I don't want to do it.
Don't do a single thing that a white man has ever done.
I've never
Please.
listened to men.
No.
I'm like, ew. Ew.
Gross.
That's what this book taught me. I only listened to
Yeah,
Imogene.
right.
What are your final thoughts?
I do really want to watch the movie.
Absolutely, me too.
I'm very curious how they like modernize it or if they have like set it in the past. I don't know.
Mm,
I don't know if it's supposed to be set in the 70s so that they can make it kind of the same.
like a Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret kind of situation. Yeah.
Yeah. But I did enjoy it and I mean it's like 80 pages. Like it was really
Less than an hour.
quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you are if your goal has not been met on Goodreads, pick this book up,
Yes.
finish it in no time at all.
Hmm.
And also, like if you have kids in your life, this is such a great book to read with them and to kind
Yeah.
of talk about with them. And it's just like a really cute Christmas classic in a way that's so different than all of the other Christmas classics we have been talking about this month.
Very different. But it should be added to them.
I think it is.
Good one. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to watch the movie because I didn't want it to taint anything that I like talked about.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about it, what era it is set in, because the book doesn't really the cover of the movie doesn't really reveal to me. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's set in the past. I kind of hope it is. I'm having a real 1970s moment right now
Oh,
partly because the book that I'm writing has this like 1970s element to it. It's not set
yeah.
then, but it's got like some things. So I've been listening to a lot of 1970s music. I've just kind of been like into the stuff, like the kind of more, not the disco-y, even though I love a disco ball. I have lots of disco balls, but more of like the earthy, burnt oranges and mustardy yellows and dark,
Yeah.
greens and blues and stuff. Having a
Yeah.
moment with those.
Love that. But yeah, it's a good one. Give it a read
Just read it.
on a Christmas morning.
Well, I will bring our first Retro Reads a Book Club to a close. I've never actually been in a book club, so I don't know.
Yeah, me
Is it
neither.
like a the prayer meeting? Is it like a
Never been to one of those either.
class? Is it like a Girl Scout meeting? I don't know, but I'm gonna bring it. I'm gonna bring it to a close. Yeah, recommend this book. Two thumbs up.
Yeah,
You two?
two thumbs up.
Two Christmas thumbs
Yes.
up. Well, thank you everyone for coming to our first month of the podcast and experiencing
Yes.
the Christmas spirit in a way that I
Oh
really
my
don't
goodness.
usually do. I've consumed way more Christmas stuff than I have in years.
Right? I mean, that's not true for me. I
Oh,
always do.
I don't. It's not for me. But it was fun. It was fun digging in.
It was. I liked it. It was different things than I usually just watch like, the cheesy Hallmark movies and stuff.
Yeah, but like watching a Degrassi episode is fun because it's like
Yeah.
drama.
Drama.
Much.
It's nostalgic for the nostalgic
Oh
nightcaps.
my gosh, that's this podcast, and you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok
Yes.
at Nostalgic Nightcaps. Rate review on whatever platform you are currently listening. We will be back in the new year. See
Yes.
you next year.
For Gothuary.
Okay. Yeah. Merry nostalgia, miss.
Merry nostalgia. Oh
Merry
gosh.
nostalgia.
Merry nostalgia. Happy Christmas.
Happy Crumbus. All right. Bye.
Bye.